who said I was a legalizer and I shouldn't have anything to say about this. Now, ASAM lost its nerve. My friends on the program committee, my friend who was the president at the time, then said to me, we want you to change your panel and add this critic. I said, no, I won't do that. And then they, for the first time ever in the history of ASAM, they had a parallel session. They had somebody plan a session on why medical marijuana was no good and was dangerous to you, and it was going to be presented at the same time as mine, and I just quit. I resigned and said, I'm not going to do this, and I've never been back to ASAM's door since. So I was not pushed out, but they behaved in such a fashion that I could no longer be a member. Now that was distressing to me, and there have been a number of such distressing events. Nobody's ever been able to hurt me. That's one of the advantages of being a tenured professor, and the people of New York are still happy to pay my salary to teach their children how to be good physicians. So I have been protected from the kind of stuff that, if you're in practice, is very hard to deal with. And so, yeah, there have been a lot of attacks on me, never for any claims of my drug use, but for my being a drug policy reformer.
Well, that's boy, I'm learning a lot here.
Yeah. Well, the best line of my recent lines is, you got to remember that reform always means that somebody has to get the bone away from the dog. If you're going to reform, that means you have to take away somebody's favorite thing, and they'll fight like a dog to keep it. So if you're going to try to reform ASAM and say, what are you talking about? You're treating marijuana dependence. You're just aiding and abetting the oppression in the American workforce. What do you mean that we should build more prisons? We should build fewer prisons. We should stop putting people in jail. And then the prison guards union, they fight for the bone. The police force fights for the bone. The urine testers fight for the bone. So always remember that drug policy reform means that you're trying to take the bone away from the dog, and the dog will fight. And that's what happened in my life a lot. But it's been okay. I've had a good time.
Well, I mean, they say the nail that sticks out gets hammered, and I would think you've had your share of hammering. You just mentioned a minute ago the word legalizer, which is very interesting because that term is used kind of, to me, it sounds like, again, back to Nazi terminology, but it's like, you know, it's demonizing.
Demonizing is the right word, for sure. In fact, it's kind of sad because it was very effective. I am, without question, a legalizer. That is, I think a human has the right to put into his body what he wishes, even if it's unwise to do so. And I think in the United States, we agree that the government should be limited in coming into our private lives, even when we were making mistakes. And so I used to always talk about legalization of marijuana, but then the term became so loaded. If you said legalization in public, you know, it was as if somebody were throwing tomatoes at your head. So I did the compromise, and I used the word decriminalize all the time, or depenalize. So I always said I didn't want anybody to ever go to jail again for use or possession of a small amount. But then I said, you know, I guess if you all are going to continue to try to stop smugglers, and it's going to continue to be against the law at some level, that's okay with me. I hope my children will be able to move so that there is indeed a controlled market in marijuana. I don't care if anybody makes any money out of it or not. That always reminds me that John D. Rockefeller, when he became opposed to the prohibition laws that he had so much aided before, he suggested that we supply alcohol, but we free it from the capitalistic system. In other words, alcohol was too dangerous to be subject to the kind of selling and marketing that would make it mostly dangerous. But he said we can't have prohibition anymore. It's so terrible what has happened. So we should have this system in which nobody can profit from it. I've always liked that as an idea. I don't think it's possible. I see no reason to believe it's possible. So ultimately, probably, somebody will profit from the sale of marijuana. But what I want is a market in which people can choose. If you want to have restrictions on children's use, if you want to have restrictions on time of sale, if you want to have restrictions on potency, all those are fine with me. But I think ultimately that's what we have to come to. This is a substance that people want to use. And many of them in a legal market will grow themselves, and there won't be this kind of battle. But there will have to be, I think, a standard product. Standard product for medicinal use is a good idea, a standard product for recreational use, and of course if you want to grow your own, that's just fine with me. And that does free us up from a lot of the complications. So I have used the word decriminalize in recent years so that I wouldn't have to pause and fight. Because what happened with the term legalize is that people decided if you said legalize, you were in favor of drug use. You wanted everybody to use drugs. You thought drugs were good.
Right.
I didn't necessarily think that. I don't necessarily think drugs are bad. Drugs are a choice, and people can make foolish mistakes. My wonderful friend Peter Cohen, I was in a debate with Mark Kleiman about marijuana decriminalization. And Mark kept talking about the need, it became broader than just marijuana, but the need to protect people from themselves. The need that some people couldn't control any longer, people who were addicted, et cetera, et cetera. And so Peter Cohen got up and said two things. One is, it seems quite clear that your policy indicates that certain people need to be treated as if they were children. And after some argument back and forth, Mark agreed that the addict needs to be treated as if he were a child. But then the next thing that Peter Cohen said was, it seems to me that one of the most important mistakes in human culture is people choosing the wrong mate to live with. An enormous mistake. And there are people who choose the wrong mate over and over again, 3, 4, 5 times, leading to divorce and all such trouble. So don't you think the government should intervene and take control of the mating system so that people could only mate and be with the right individual for themselves? And of course, on the surface of it, that's absurd, but that's exactly what a vice prohibition system does. It says, you are not competent to make these choices. You are a child, or it's as if you were a child, and we who run the state control apparatus will make these decisions for you. And it's been horrible, and it's time to stop.
Well, John, one thing is, it seems to me it's inspiring to come to these meetings and to hear people such as yourself speak candidly the truth. And but it's kind of ironic. You go back home and you flip on national TV and you see the same old bullshit, the same old crap, just thrown right on top of it again and again and again. And I mean, it's wonderful. It's inspiring that you've written marijuana myths, marijuana facts, and all the work that you've done for all these years and what you're doing now. But with all of this experience, both of your own personal and professional knowledge, along with your accumulated knowledge of how the system actually works, what's your vision for getting out of this mess?
Well, that's the hardest question of all. I have a vision which says that a government which stays away from people's private choices regarding substances, regarding behavior, regarding victimless crimes, is the government should stay away. And that's been my guiding light. And in a certain sense, I have libertarian values, although I'm not a good libertarian, and because I like government action in certain other ways. But I never have lost that vision that individual freedom and individual choice were what matters and what made the difference in American life and culture. Everything of value in American life and culture seems to me has come because of individual choice and people making those free choices. So it's easy to be in this battle. It's also easy to lose heart, either short-term or long-term, because the conflicts never go away. On the other hand, if people's will to fight went away, where would we be? We'd be a nation of sheep. So that's an insult to sheep, because we're in some ways worse than sheep. But the sheep don't do the bad things that we do. But anyway, I am happy to be in the fight. It's still fun, and it's still right. You heard somebody say today that as long as what we're doing we think is right, it's unlikely, and we're guided by a vision of what's right, then it's unlikely we're ever going to harm or do anything really bad to the fabric of American life. And I think that's true.
Okay, but how do you see things changing? Though?
Yeah.
I mean, do you?
Not a good predictor.
What is
Not as bad as Lester, who said in the 1970s, right after he published Marijuana Reconsidered, that it would be 10 years before decriminalization. Bless his heart. So I have no predictions. But I think things are getting better. I think we
You
have
do.